നമസ്കാരം ഫോർട്ടി ന്യൂസിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം. സഭയിൽ ഭൂരിപക്ഷമുള്ളതുകൊണ്ട് കയ്യിൽ ഭരണമുള്ളതുകൊണ്ടും ഏത് ബില്ല് വേണമെങ്കിലും പാസ്സാക്കിയെടുക്കാമെന്ന ആത്മവിശ്വാസമാണ് BJPക്കുള്ളത്. 2024 മുതൽ ആ ധൈര്യത്തിലാണ് അവർ മുന്നോട്ട് പോയിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. എന്നാൽ ശശി തരൂർ MP-യുടെ അടുത്തത് ചിലവാകില്ല. അത് നരേന്ദ്രമോദിക്ക് തന്നെ നന്നായി അറിയാം. മോദി തരംഗം നിലനിന്ന 2014-ലും 2019-ലും മോദിക്കെതിരെ ആഞ്ഞടിച്ച ഒരു വ്യക്തിയായിരുന്നു ശശി തരൂർ MP. ഇപ്പോഴും അതേ വാശിയോടെയും ചങ്കൂറ്റത്തോടെയും മോദി സർക്കാരിനെതിരെ ആഞ്ഞടിക്കുകയാണ് ശശി തരൂർ. മറ്റൊന്നുമല്ല, വയനാട് ദുരന്തത്തിൽ മലക്കം മറയുന്ന കേന്ദ്ര സർക്കാരിനെ വലിച്ചുകീറി ഭിത്തിയിൽ ഒട്ടിച്ചിരിക്കുകയാണ് ശശി തരൂർ. ദുരന്ത നിവാരണ ഭേദഗതി ബില്ലിലെ ചർച്ചയ്ക്ക് കേന്ദ്ര സർക്കാരിനെ കീറി മുറിക്കുകയാണ് ശശി തരൂർ. വയനാട് ദുരന്തം ഉയർത്തിക്കാട്ടിയാണ് ബില്ലിനെതിരെ അതിരൂക്ഷമായ വിമർശനം MP ഉന്നയിച്ചത്. ആഭ്യന്തര സഹമന്ത്രി നിത്യാനന്ദ റായിയാണ് ബിൽ അവതരിപ്പിച്ചത്. പുതിയ ബില്ലിനെ തന്നെ ദുരന്തം എന്നായിരുന്നു ശശി തരൂർ ആദ്യം തന്നെ വിശേഷിപ്പിച്ചത്. വയനാട് അടക്കമുള്ള പ്രദേശങ്ങളിലെ ദുരന്തങ്ങൾ കാണാത്ത മോദി സർക്കാരാണ് ഈ രാജ്യത്തെ ഏറ്റവും വലിയ ദുരന്തമെന്ന് തരൂർ തുറന്നടിക്കുകയാണ്. ശശി തരൂരിന്റെ ആ വാക്കുകളിലേക്ക്.
Not from the 8th to 10th of August, and the central government would take action based on its request. August, sir. They're supposed to take action within 1 month according to the existing act. To this date, no action has been taken, and no additional funds have been arranged for Wayanad, sir. How can we accept this? Now, this bill, Mr. Chairman, is an excellent case of minimum decentralization, maximum declamation, at which, of course, this government excels. Indeed, even one of the bill's better provisions is undermined by the government's refusal to walk the talk. I refer to the creation of separate urban disaster management authorities in state capitals and cities with municipal corporations, except Delhi and Chandigarh. This has been introduced to foster greater coordination than what is possible under the disaster management authorities in our big urban centres. But even while it takes a step which otherwise I would have applauded, the centre fails to provide for any necessary financial devolution, without which this measure will be toothless, sir. While the government appears to have recognized that district administrations across India should tackle emerging threats on their own terms and in line with local conditions, it has overlooked the dismal fact that in our country the total municipal expenditure accounts for barely 0.79% of GDP. Paise kahan hai? Given that this bill focuses on disaster risk reduction rather than post-disaster management, it's crucial that the government realize that urban local bodies need to be financially empowered, as in other countries, to amass resources to institute, equip and run urban disaster management authorities and discharge their risk reduction obligations to the letter. For risk reduction activities to be conducted at the local level, the creation of infrastructure that bolsters the vitality and vigor of urban local bodies is vital. But this bill is silent on the issue, offering no real resources to revitalize India's urban local bodies. Now, this creation of these bodies could have been a good step towards sustainable urban spaces, but it will be useless without effective devolution of finances and authority, Mr. Minister. This needs to be amended, this half-baked provision. Another damaging aspect of this bill: it seeks to weaken the National Executive Committee and the state executive committees, staffed to the level of secretaries to the governments of India and the states, which are supposed to formulate national level and state level disaster management plans. If this bill passes, the NDMA and the SDMAs will instead assume this power. At the same time, these committees will remain the coordinating bodies for relief, rehabilitation and reconstruction during and after natural disasters, saddling them in effect with the responsibility for exercising disaster management plans that they did not formulate. So you've got to execute something that you did not actually come up with. This flies in the complete logic of the original purpose of these committees, which was to foster greater collaboration amongst various ministries, sir, of the union and state governments. Federalism, cooperative federalism. Where is the cooperative federalism here? So the bill's major weakness has throughout been its inability to innovate on institutional mechanisms to deal with disaster risk. Although it achieves coordination for greater risk management, it offers no clarity on how to achieve such coordination in practice amongst a wide range of institutions, split both vertically and horizontally, and including non-government, private and civil society elements. By the way, Mr. Chairman, and the Minister has not noted this, disaster relief, rehabilitation and reconstruction is still not a justiciable right in India. The Indian state has for far too long undertaken relief measures as an obligation, not a duty. It must discharge that duty in fulfillment of its citizens' inviolable rights. This has been an issue for years, but the bill would have been an opportunity to fix it, because we are learning lessons from what hasn't worked in the earlier version. You have instead squandered it, Mr. Minister. You will, of course, carry out relief assistance up to your whims, your political expediencies. You may provide ex gratia compensation. You may provide relief items, compensation for destruction of houses, etc., destruction of boats, fishing equipment, farming equipment, etc. But all of this will vary from place to place, and it must change. Disaster relief must be a fundamental right of all Indian citizens. It's also important, so one important negative factor of this bill that testifies to its lack of imagination, creativity and reluctance to accept the bleak realities of our environment. On 25th of July, the Honourable Minister of State for Science and Technology and Earth Sciences told this House, sir, that the government has no plans to classify coastal erosion or heat waves as notified disasters under the Disaster Management Act 2005. Now, this, sir, is crazy. We need to expand the list of notified disasters given our own experience since the Act was passed in 2005. To this day, the disasters eligible for assistance under the NDRF remain limited to cyclones, floods, droughts, earthquakes, landslides and so on. Coastal erosion and heat waves are conspicuously absent. This narrow, outdated definition of disaster stands in contrast to the growing global consensus that recognizes coastal erosion and heat waves as climate-related disasters. The devastating impacts of these calamities on ecosystems, on human health, are no longer matters of debate, sir. My own constituency has lost 65 square kilometres to coastal erosion since I became the MP. I've said in this House and in a letter to the Prime Minister, if we had lost 1 inch to the Chinese, we would have made it a national issue. We have lost 65 kilometres to natural disasters. We don't seem to care. I'm sorry, sir. According to the All India Meteorological Department, 2024 has witnessed already a staggering 536 heatwave days, the highest in nearly 14 years, and between 2013 and 2022, heat waves and sunstrokes claimed more than 10,000 lives. And yet, the government obstinately refuses to acknowledge this disaster looming over us. The Disaster Management Act was passed over 19 years ago. It might not have anticipated that climate change would get so bad and that coastal erosion and heat waves would transmogrify into such a formidable challenge in the future. But why not this bill? If this bill has learned any lessons in the last 19 years, they should show them here. Why could it not devise a mechanism to grapple with this burgeoning crisis? Though the Disaster Management Act's definition of a disaster is actually broad enough to encompass climate-induced events, its statutory list remains static and unimaginative. It obstinately ignores the realities that our citizens are enduring, sir. This is a dangerous oversight, as the impacts of such events, widespread loss of life, destruction of livelihoods, are no less severe than the devastation wrought by floods or earthquakes. In failing to adapt, we risk exposure to avoidable calamities. The government demonstrates its indifference to the plight of those numerous Indians who perished because of heat stroke or lost their homes and livelihoods to coastal erosion. Therefore, the NDMA needs to enhance its capacity to prevent climate change from becoming disasters, such as unprecedented landslides in Wayanad's case, heat waves and storms. Let's not forget, sir, that amongst the primary contributors to the Wayanad calamity were a host of issues, not just excessive rainfall, as the Home Minister mentioned. These were widespread deforestation, with 62% of Wayanad's forests having disappeared since 1950, ceaseless soil erosion, made more relentless by rainwater seeping into loose topsoil, which reduces soil cohesion and contributes to landslides, and soil piping, the formation of underground tunnels because of subsurface soil erosion. I won't go on, sir, but the fact I want to say very simply is that climate change is worsening the situation, especially with more flash floods and landslips being triggered by merciless, ruthless monsoons. With the warming of the Arabian Sea creating deep cloud systems which result in brief spells of ruthlessly intense rainfall, Kerala will be yet more vulnerable to landslides. We must take stock of these facts, uncomfortable though they may be, and seek to confront them head on, Mr. Chair.
Sir. Thank you.
Sir, I will wrap up. I just need 2 minutes for one last point, sir. We wanted this bill. We wanted it to be imaginative and innovative, but we have seen none of that. We have not